So this bill targets anyone unlawfully on a farm, which in Ontario and Alberta includes undercover workers and journalists. The language prohibiting taking a thing into a farm seems targeted at a hidden camera that an undercover worker or journalist might wear, and puts these whistleblowers at significant risk of prosecution simply for bringing images to the world.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
You know, I'm a farmer, and Ms. Labchuk, you mentioned that you believe that public trust is low with our farmers, but I beg to differ. As a farmer who has to adhere to the very strictest of food safety standards, and some of the strictest actually in the world, whether it's CFIA regulations, it's provincial food safety regulations, or even standards set by each individual agriculture sector, we adhere to the strictest of standards. And in fact, you know, there's actually a headline here. I'll read it back to you. Firefighters, nurses, and farmers respected most by Canadians. So I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. I trust our farmers. Our farmers are some of the safest in the world with their practices for ensuring food safety in this country. So I just have a few questions for you. Have you ever been on a farm?
I grew up in rural Prince Edward Island, so I've been on plenty of farms.
And so you've lived on a farm? Have you lived on a farm?
No, I didn't grow up on a farm.
Okay. Have you ever cared for livestock on a farm at all?
I've been around plenty of farmed animals.
So you've never cared for livestock yourself or on a farm?
Do you mean have I owned farmed animals?
Yes, have you cared for them?
Have I actually farmed them? Well, no, as I've mentioned, I'm a lawyer, not a farmer.
Okay. Do you think animals should be used for food?
Look, the mission of animal justice, I just want to be really clear about what I'm here to say to you today. We exist to lead the legal fight for animals. We work to improve the legal protections for animals. As I've mentioned, unfortunately, I appreciate what you're saying about food safety, but we actually do have some of the worst animal protection legislation in the Western world.
So do you think animals should be used for food?
Well, look, we're here
It's a yes or no answer.
About improving the laws protecting animals. It's undeniable that Canada doesn't have any of those laws on the books right now.
Okay,
and I think
excuse me, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you because there was not an answer to that question. I'll go to my next question. Do you believe that animals should have the same legal standing as humans?
By legal standing, do you mean what exactly?
Legal standing.
So legal standing is a term of art referring to whether someone has the right to go to court to seek a legal remedy if their rights are being violated. So animals don't currently have any rights. What we would say is that, as I've repeatedly mentioned to this committee, animals currently don't benefit from on-farm legal protections. They have some of the worst laws protecting them in the Western world.
So you believe in protecting animals over humans and the rights of Canadians and farmers to have secure farms
at all. I'm saying that
does it concern you? Does it concern you that those who come onto farms uninvited are putting livestock at threat and at risk?
Animal justice doesn't advocate for on-farm trespassing. What we're here today to say is that we have very poor laws protecting animals. And that fact is what's contributing to this very low public trust in agriculture.
I'll disagree with you again. There is not a low public trust in agriculture, and that's been proven. Well, does it concern you that those who come onto farms uninvited are causing psychological harm to farmers and their families?
What concerns me is that there is low public trust in agriculture, and you can look at studies from places like the Center for Food Integrity, which is an industry organization, that show that people are increasingly concerned about animal welfare on farms.
So the welfare of the farmers and the farm families doesn't concern you at all?
Yeah, I'm concerned about the welfare of animals. I'm concerned about the welfare of
farmers. So not the people who run the farms. Great. Does it concern you that those who come onto farms uninvited are causing trauma to children who live on the farms?
Look, as I've said, we don't advocate for on-farm trespass. I'm here today because what this bill would do is shut off undercover videos from investigations that are employment-based where people lawfully work on a farm and expose what they see to the world. And oftentimes, unfortunately, that includes animal cruelty. And these videos have resulted in prosecutions. They've resulted in policy changes.
Thank you very much. Again, not an answer. I'm going to turn my comments and questions over to Dr. Lazaire. Dr. Lazaire, at your testimony at committee in the Ontario Legislature on Bill 156, you said, and I quote, "There are ways to achieve the legislative objective here that have less of an impact on fundamental freedoms, such as simply raising the penalties for trespassing or expressly prohibiting the introduction of biosecurity threats like the federal private members bill C-205 would do. And both of these things would impair rights less than the current form of legislation, and that, again, is enough for the law to fail." And in your opening comments, you believe that this, in your words, that Parliament, and not in your words, but you alluded to the fact that Parliament doesn't have checks and balances set up, when in fact they do, to vet private members' bills to make sure that they are constitutional before they're even introduced. So thank you for acknowledging that this bill, formerly C-205, prohibits the introduction of biosecurity threats on farm. And we've already established through previous testimony that whistleblowers are protected under C-275 since they have lawful authority to be on the premise. And therefore, the provisions in this bill would not apply to them. Would you agree? And how does this bill ban whistleblowers?
I'm sorry, there were a lot of questions there. What I said with respect to Bill 156 in Ontario is that Parliament could prohibit the introduction of biosecurity threats on farms. But what I'm saying today is that this bill doesn't do that because it only applies to trespassers who are not the people who, according to the evidence, are not the ones introducing biosecurity risks on farms. So that's number one. How does this bill prevent whistleblowing? Well, as Ms. Labchuk stated, in certain provinces, entry onto a farm as a whistleblower or an undercover investigator is illegal. So those people would be on farm illegally, making them subject to prosecution under this bill as well. I don't think I said that there are no checks and balances. I think the point in a committee hearing like this is to hear from experts from the CFIA, experts in animal protection, experts in constitutional law. And that's precisely what we're doing right here is, discussing the validity of the law.
Thanks, Dr. Lazar. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the witnesses being here. Dr. Island, you said there are no confirmed cases, but the example in Quebec, there was no rotavirus on that farm for 40 years, and then after unlawful protesters were on that farm, rotavirus came back. Is that not an actual link between those two, or after 40 years it just magically appeared because they had changed practices, and the only thing that was different on that farm was one day there was unlawful protesters on there, the next day there wasn't, and then they had a rotavirus?
Mr. Chair, I deal in science, and so that is not a confirmed case where we would say that the trespassers were linked to that, and I wouldn't want to speculate, Mr. Chair, on
Would you confirm
cases.
that it could not be linked?
I cannot confirm that because I don't
perfect.
have the data in front of me, Mr. Chair, and I have
the
not
mink
investigated
farm,
that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
the mink farm in Ontario, trespassers released thousands of animals, and then there's an outbreak of distemper. Could that just be a coincidence?
So, Mr. Chair, again, I deal in evidence. I don't know that case. I don't have the data before me. I would say that the release of animals may cause an animal health and welfare issue, but I cannot confirm that one equaled the other there. Thank you.
But you wouldn't deny there is a possibility of that happening?
I would not speculate either way, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. There has been speculation either way, obviously, because we're having the discussion of whether that's a possibility or not. And I think to just blindly say a statement that Canadians don't have trust in our farmers anymore is damaging to our reputation. And I think it does a great disservice to our producers across the country. And I really feel we've gone into a weird place with the Agriculture Committee right now where we're actually putting farmers on trial and saying that they're not doing their job. I grew up on a dairy and beef farm, and I know the protocols we had, and some of the CFIA standards we're talking about are voluntary, and we're trying to say now that our producers aren't doing the job and aren't going the extra mile to make sure their animals are safe. And I, for one, don't believe that for a second. We had a program, and lots of dairy farmers have this program. Mr. LaHoo is a dairy farmer as well. It's called Herd Health, and veterinarians come and check on the herd health twice a month. And if veterinarians would find something wrong, they would contact the CFIA if they had a big concern. Can you comment on that, Dr. Island, and comment on some of the processes and protocols that our producers do voluntarily? And if there is something wrong, they do have professionals on the farm that come and check, like herd health, and they have it in other industries as well, pork and dairy, just some of those protocols that our farmers follow that are above and beyond some of our jurisdictions across the world.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. So, in the next session, you're going to have a producer speaking to you, and that might be a good question. And I think producers and associations are well placed to talk about the practices of their producers. I was a large animal veterinarian. I am aware. And I think it links back to my earlier comment, which is the vast majority of producers value the health and welfare of their animals. That includes proper veterinary care, that includes biosecurity, because preventing disease spread and introduction into a farm is in everyone's best interest. It is linked to their livelihood, it is linked to their business. And I would say it's also for maybe a backyard flock owner, also important for them to maintain the health and well-being of their animals.
Thank you. And just a couple more comments. Ms. Labchuk, you did talk about the fact that someone videotaped a cesarean happening. I saw a lot of cesareans when I grew up on a dairy farm, and lots of those procedures were done to save the mother and the calf. And you know what? It isn't a pretty sight, but it sometimes is necessary to save an animal as well, to do a medical procedure. And when you see it on film, it may not look very nice, but it actually, in fact, most of the time, it ended up saving the lives of those animals because there was a vet that came here on time, and you had a beautiful baby calf, perhaps a 4-H calf, because I had a lot of 4-H animals. And when you show it on video, you're actually doing a great disservice to the producers and the farmers, because they do take their animals seriously. And you know what? They hired a vet to come out and do this procedure so those animals would survive. And I think we should really take a step back and look at this committee and not be putting our Canadian producers on trial here for not taking good care of their animals.
Thank you, Mr. Steinley.